Welcome back, everybody, to the Seattle Sonics, MyNBA franchise, here on NBA 2K22. Before you get to today's episode, if you haven't watched the last one yet, make sure you do so, because it was Game 7 of the NBA Finals. I'll leave a card at the top right of your screen in case you did miss it, but long story short, it was a super exciting game, down to the wire. But we did the job. We have won the NBA Finals, beating the St. Louis Spirits 116-104 in Game 7, led by a 41-9 performance from Oscar J. Basilin, who is still injured, by the way. He did this pretty much on one leg, which is remarkable. Kyril Story and Buzz Wigginton have both been fantastic as well during the NBA Finals. Story averaged over 27 per game during the Finals. I thought he should have won Finals MVP personally, but Buzz Wigginton deserved it equally, and they ended up giving it to him. Buzz averaged around 21 and 12 with excellent defense. Without his defense, I don't think we would have won this series, so I can't really fault the game for giving it to Buzz over Story. St. Louis gave it everything they got. Russell Westbrook was phenomenal in Game 7. Ayo Odiyemi was unbelievable throughout the entire series as a whole, and it was a super exciting NBA Finals from start to finish. Game 7 was actually the largest margin of defeat at 12, and it was still a really close game. Here's a look at the playoff statistics for the 4 series that we went through and won. And then we'll also briefly look at the regular season stats as well. So what we're going to do today, now that Season 4 is done, now that we have an NBA championship, we're going to preview this upcoming offseason. This offseason is a pivotal one for our team because we've got to figure out how to put ourselves in position to not only hopefully repeat next year's NBA champions, but set ourselves up to be a possible dynasty in the future. We've got a lot of guys whose contracts are up this season and a lot of guys who aren't signed long-term. So we've really got to figure out who is a future part of this team and who we are going to let go of. So as we preview the offseason today, we're going to go over player retirements, league meetings, which I do have a big new rule for the league planned, the draft lottery, and of course the NBA draft, which I know people are going to be really excited about. We have not talked about the draft in a while. I'm pretty sure the last time I made a video regarding this year's current draft class was the day I hit 10,000 subscribers, and here we are 2.5 thousand later, and an NBA championship later as well. We do have a lottery pick from the Pelicans, keep in mind, so it's not like we're picking at the end of the first round. We're probably going to pick in the middle of the first round unless we get super lucky with the draft lottery, which will be today. So as we start with player retirements, there were a lot of big names here, including arguably the greatest player of all time, certainly the greatest player of our generation, and that is LeBron James, retiring as a member of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Hats off to one of the greatest. Other big names include Mike Conley, Russell Westbrook, whose final game was the Game 7 loss against us. Patrick Beverley retires as an NBA champion. He's always going to hold that above Russ. Other big names include Draymond Green, Kevin Love, amongst others. Some notable staff who are retiring include Evan Turner and Mike Woodson, who I guess didn't really work out at the University of Indiana, so he got another job in the NBA and already retired. LeBron James and Russell Westbrook, both in the Hall of Fame, very well deserved. As for jersey retirements, Russ is getting his Thunder jersey retired, LeBron is getting his retired by the Heat, Cavs, and Lakers, and Draymond Green is getting his retired by the Golden State Warriors. So I hinted a couple minutes ago that there's going to be a new big-time rule change. It's what I'm kind of excited about. We're going to decrease the shot clock to 20 seconds from 24 seconds. This is going to lead to quicker possessions, which is going to lead to more offense and more action. So I think it's going to inflate the stats a little bit as well, which might be interesting. So let's now hop into the draft lottery. We currently own the 17th projected pick from a trade we made earlier in the season with the Pelicans when we swapped first-round picks and gave them Fred VanVleet. Some other notable storylines here include the Spirits, who are projected to pick 6th. The 2 new expansion teams from last year, the Capitanes and the Royals, are projected to have the top 2 picks. So there's the Raptors at 18. This should be us at 17, and it is. We're not going to get lucky, unfortunately. Obviously, I wasn't expecting to. We had a 1% chance at the number 1 pick and a very low chance of jumping into the top 4. So we're going to pick 17 this year. This is where we have our first change. The Wizards pick at 15, so the 76ers are moving into the top 4. The 76ers pick was protected and supposed to go to the Brooklyn Nets, but since it's in the top 4, it'll return to Philadelphia. A massive blow for the Nets and a huge break for the 76ers, who weren't even expecting to get a first-round pick this year, and now they're going to be picking in the top 4. Other than that, no real changes so far. The Magic with 2 picks in the lottery here at 14 and 11. The Blazers are projected to have back-to-back picks. They will finish with 10. And unfortunately here for Portland, they would not get lucky as they end up with 9 as well. Our buddies, the St. Louis Spirits, are coming up. They got a pick from the Los Angeles Clippers. I don't remember exactly what deal that would be. They're projected to go here after New Orleans, and indeed the Pelicans will pick 8 via the Milwaukee Bucks. Here comes the Spirits at 7. They will not move into the top 4. So far, the only team to jump in is the Philadelphia 76ers, who were projected all the way down at 15. Pick 6 will go to the Phoenix Suns. So again, not a whole lot of changes. And now at 5, it'll go to the Mexico City Capitanes, who get completely screwed over. They were projected to have the top pick in the draft, and they fall to 5. Oklahoma City will pick 4 via the Utah Jazz. Now we are down to 3. The 3rd pick will go to the San Antonio Spurs. They have 2 lottery picks at 13 and 3. The Spurs finally get a top pick where they can finally get an all-star upside player. The 2nd pick goes to the Montreal Royals, which means with all odds against them, the Philadelphia 76ers, who had the 15th best odds and were not even supposed to have a first-round draft pick, are picking number 1 overall. So pretty much everybody got screwed, particularly the Capitanes, and then the Sixers jumped all the way from 15 to 1 in the biggest NBA draft lottery jump ever. Now that we know where everybody is picking, it's time to figure out who everybody will be selecting. We've already gone through some of the top prospects in an earlier draft-related video, but that was like 2+ months ago. So we're going to go through all of these top guys again, and then we're going to go over some players the Seattle Sonics could consider with their first-round pick at number 17 overall. This year, there's no clear selection at number 1 overall for the Philadelphia 76ers. If I were them, I would select Masako Ujiri from Simeon Academy in Chicago, Illinois. In my opinion, this is the player with the most upside of anybody in this draft class. With his size and length on the wings, added along with his versatility, he's got a great ability to switch onto the perimeter defensively, but he also has, the size and the muscle to bang down low. Offensively, he's not very polished. He's not a good three-point shooter yet, but he has all the tools to become one. He has a good free-throw shot. He's good in the mid-range, so I think he has the tools to be a good three-point shooter, and that's really the only weakness in his game right now. He's a great athlete, pretty good playmaker, again, awesome defender, so again, he's a little bit raw. He's not overly polished, but he's the player I'd select number 1 overall if I was the 76ers. There are plenty of other options for the Sixers, including Nigerian center Yaziz Nkrumah Beakazizwe. This kid is 7'4". He has got unbelievable size and length, similar to a guy like Dayo Emembenigba, who was the number 1 overall pick a couple of years ago by the Spirits, and that pick has really worked out. Nkrumah Beakazizwe is a lot thicker and stronger than Dayo Emembenigba, but he's just nowhere near as skilled offensively. Dayo Emembenigba is a great shooter, he's a great ball handler, and a great playmaker, and Nkrumah Beakazizwe doesn't really have that, so I don't think he has the upside of a guy like Dayo Emembenigba, but as a prospect, he's not far off. After these two, we get a bunch of guards projected in the top 5 as we start with French point guard Cairo Nazarenka. The amount of European and international talent in this draft class is really exciting. It's cool to see so many players from around the world becoming basketball stars at a very young age, with French point guard Cairo Nazarenka being no exception. He's somebody who's going to be a plus scorer in the NBA as a 19-year-old rookie. He can score from all 3 levels. He's a great playmaker. He's a pretty good defender, and he has strong athleticism. There aren't any weaknesses in his game. He checks every box, which is why he's projected to go in the top 3. If he's not your cup of tea, what about Lorenzo Lawson, the most exciting player in college basketball this past season for the Nebraska Cornhuskers? Lawson is a human highlight reel. This guy can absolutely slam dunk on your face, but he's not just some highlight dunker. He is a legitimately good basketball player and a well-deserved top 5 pick in the NBA. He's one of the best shooters in this class, particularly from 3. He's a very solid playmaker. He needs to maybe be a little bit more unselfish at times with the basketball, but when he is unselfish, he knows how to make really good reads and really strong passes. Defensively, he's pretty solid, and his athleticism is off the charts. Let's take a look at British prospect Silas Edwards, who played last year at Brewster Academy. When we had last talked about these prospects, Edwards was projected to go 9th. I had said he's going to play his way into a top 5 pick, and that is exactly what has happened. Silas Edwards is absolutely going to go in the top 5, and even though his highest level of competition is high school ball, I still view him as one of the most NBA-ready prospects in this draft class because his skills are so translatable. He's one of the best pure scorers in the class. He's phenomenal driving to the basket from mid-range and from 3. Great playmaker, great defender. He's just not a good athlete, which really limits his ceiling, but the floor is very high, and you're getting someone who's going to be a starting caliber point guard right away as a 19-year-old rookie. So Silas Edwards, certainly a guy who's going to be a stud early on. Victor Hines Jr. from Michigan State is very interesting because when we had last talked about him, he had not played a game yet for the Spartans. He tore his ACL late last season and missed the first 11 games of this year, but when he came back, he was very impressive. When I watch Victor Hines, I think of a baby Kyril Story. He's a little bit smaller than Story, but I think they have the same strengths and weaknesses. Hines is inconsistent as a shooter, but he's a great slasher. When he's on, he's on. He's a good playmaker. Good defender as well, so although he doesn't have the size or length that a guy like Kyril Story does, I think both of their games are pretty similar. I think Hines is going to go earlier than Story, largely because so many teams just completely overthought Kyril Story. I don't know how he fell to pick 9, but that's besides the point. Let's take a look at the French Michael Jordan. This is Makai Jordan. He's a very raw forward, but the upside is certainly there, and again, he has all the physical tools to be a really, really good NBA player. Is he going to be as good as his namesake, Michael Jordan? No, probably not, but I really like what he brings to the table. He's great at driving to the basket. He's a phenomenal slasher. He's a great finisher. Inconsistent as a shooter, but he's got good form as a jump shooter. I wish he was a little bit more versatile defensively. He's great in the post, but he needs to improve on the perimeter. I think if he can improve his lateral quickness and his defensive IQ, he could be a good perimeter defender in due time. Marquise Ramsey out of the University of Central Florida has seemingly come out of nowhere. At the beginning of the season, he was a fringe starter in the American Athletic Conference, and now he looks like a possible top 10 pick. Ramsey has been one of the most impressive college basketball players this year, again, seemingly out of nowhere. He won the Conference Player of the Year, leading UCF to a number 5 seed in the NCAA tournament, and again, has played his way into top 10 conversation. He's inconsistent as a scorer, but he's got a great in-between game in the mid-range. He's a good defender, but it's the athleticism, which is why he's going to go in the top 10. This is a world-class athlete with unbelievable upside, and the college production is there. Again, he won Conference Player of the Year this year at the University of Central Florida, so he's somebody who's a well-deserving top 10 pick. Another player who has come out of nowhere this year is Illinois forward Sanjay Waweru. Try saying that name 5 times in a row. You're going to get your tongue stuck in a twister. Waweru was a 3-star recruit this year, comes onto Illinois' campus as a freshman, and just seemingly takes the Big Ten by storm. This guy is really, really talented. I sort of view him as a baby Buzz Wigginton, in a way. With his defense, although it's raw, but improving. He's a good playmaker, good scorer. The athleticism is there as well. He's a really talented player who has, again, played his way into top 10 conversation. Ikenu Chukwumereji, the center out of Oregon, is the next guy we're going to look at. This is the younger cousin of Bwana Chukwumereji, who was a top 5 pick from the Thunder a few years ago, and Uzoma Chukwumereji, who is our starting center. This kid, Ikenu Chukwumereji, is not the athlete that those two guys are, but he's a lot more skilled. There's more to his game offensively as a jump shooter, as a floor spacer, as a passer. He's just not as dominant of a rim protector down low. He's a more modernized version of a guy like Uzoma Chukwumereji. And no, he's not as dominant in the post. He's not athletic. He's not as quick. But he can space the floor. He can handle the ball. He can create for himself and his teammates. And I am very confident in Ikenu Chukwumereji being a good player. These top 10 picks are really, really talented guys, but I don't think they're going to fall to Seattle. Let's now take a look at some players who could fall to the Sonics at pick 17. That list starts with Montverde Academy's Khalil Zaire, who, in my opinion, is one of the most polarizing players in the class. He's a 6'4" power forward, but he's built like a defensive lineman. He weighs in at almost 280 pounds, and he's just a complete bully down low. There are shades of Zion Williamson in this kid's game, and no, he's not as athletic as Zion Williamson, but he has a very similar play style. Zaire won the Gatorade High School Player of the Year over guys like Misango Inyago and Silas Edwards, who are going to go before him in this year's draft class. I don't think there's a high chance Zaire falls to 17, probably under 50%, but there's a world where he does, and maybe the Sonics want to take the unicorn type of prospect. Leo Borrotondo out of UCLA has a very interesting story. Borrotondo reclassified after his junior year of high school to join UCLA a year early, and he was a freshman the same year that Oscar J. Basile played for UCLA. Borrotondo was actually rated as a higher high school prospect than Oscar J. Basile, but Oscar was a lot better as a freshman, declared right after that, and well, the rest is history. Borrotondo has stuck around at UCLA until this year as a senior, and although it took a little bit longer for him to get going, he has really improved as a four-year player and was the best player on the best team in college basketball this season. Borrotondo is projected to go in the same range that Oscar was when he declared for the draft in the 10 to 14 area, and of course Oscar J. Basile fell all the way to pick 23. So although I don't think that'll be the case with Borrotondo, that suggests that he certainly could fall to 17. Borrotondo isn't the athlete or the scorer that Oscar is, but he does have more length, and he plays the point guard position really, really well. French forward Tavin Dubois is really the perfect type of Seattle Sonic, in my opinion. He really fits all of what I look for in a prospect on the wings. This is a kid who can score the ball fairly efficiently from all three levels and has shown a ton of improvement there over the years. He's a really solid playmaker for his size. He's a pretty versatile defender, and he has solid athleticism as well. I don't think his ceiling is super sky high, but I think he is in the perfect position to be a role player very early on in his NBA career, and we're looking for guys who can compete right away, and I think Tavin Dubois can do exactly that. McGlovin Ashe from Arizona State's an intriguing prospect as well. Offensively, he's one of the most gifted players in the Pac-12. He's a phenomenal shooter, particularly off the catch. We're looking for guys who can help space the floor off the bench, with Emmanuel Quickley and Dikembe Mukuamu both as free agents. Quickley and Mukuamu were two of our best shooters last year, so with both of them possibly being gone, we need other guys who can shoot the rock, space the floor, and get other guys open. McGlovin Ashe is also a pretty good defender, so he'll be a guy who can be a 3-and-D player right away. And again, this is somebody who's going to be able to compete at a high level very early on. Even if he doesn't have a sky-high ceiling, he's going to be a good role player on day one. Makai Moon from UCLA is a very talented player as well. When we had talked about Leo Borrotondo earlier, I had mentioned that UCLA was the best team in the country, led by Borrotondo and Makai Moon, both of whom were all NCAA first-team members. UCLA only lost one game of a regular season. They got eliminated early in the postseason, losing in the Sweet 16 to Virginia Tech, but Makai Moon was fantastic all season. He played really well in that Sweet 16 game. He's a great shooter from mid-range and three. He's a pretty good defender, pretty solid athlete. The playmaking is a work in progress. So again, he's another guy who really fits my type of billing of what type of prospects I want. Chuma Ndiaye has seen his stock go up faster than anybody. Ndiaye was the best player on a really good Stanford team who ended up becoming a 3-seed in the NCAA tournament, but they were an under-the-radar 3-seed, and not a lot of people really expected them to make a ton of noise. Well, lo and behold, the Stanford Cardinal ended up winning the NCAA championship, led by Final Four MVP Chuma Ndiaye, who scored 26 points in the national championship game over the University of Kentucky. Ndiaye is going to be a really good 3-and-D player right off the bat. He does have great athleticism, which suggests that he has a high ceiling, so he's another guy who I think the Sonics are really going to like at pick 17. Hassani Carson from England is another possibility with that selection as well. England hasn't really bred out talented basketball players, but this year they're going to have 2 first-rounders. Silas Edwards was originally born in England and played there up until this past season where he moved to the United States, and then Hassani Carson, who has stayed in Britain through his whole career. Carson's an inconsistent scorer, but he's really improved over the past year or two as a 3-point shooter. He's a great playmaker as well. The defense is a work in progress. The athleticism isn't great, but he's a very skilled offensive player, which I think will intrigue the Sonics at pick 17. Usher Sage, also known as USS Splash, and he gets that name because he can splash. The best 3-point shooter in this class, led the ACC in scoring this year as a senior, and in the NCAA tournament, he pretty much single-handedly defeated number 1 UCLA in the Sweet 16 before getting eliminated in the Elite 8 by the eventual national champion Stanford. USS Splash, again, as his nickname goes, is, again, the perfect role player. He's a phenomenal sharpshooter. Again, the best one in this class, making 46% of his threes this year on very high efficiency. He needs to improve as a defender, so he's not really a 3-and-D guy. He's more of just a 3 guy. But he shoots the 3 really, really damn well and spaces the floor better than anybody in this draft class. The Sonics look for wings who can defend, but I think with his jump shot being so good, maybe that'll combat his lack of defense. As we go down the board a little bit, there are some more guys I like, including the Odiyemi twins. This is Ayo Odiyemi from Nigeria. He's a slashing forward who is built like a defensive end. 6'6", nearly 280 pounds as a 2-guard. His mobility, however, suggests that he's not 280. He runs like he's 220. His size doesn't hurt him at all. If anything, it helps him because he's a very strong player who's really good at boxing out. It gives him the versatility to defend down low, added on the fact that he has good length with his high wingspan. He's very raw on offense, though. He's also pretty raw defensively. It's more so the physical upside with him. He's not going to be great right away, but the ceiling is certainly there. His twin brother, Ayo Odiyemi, is a little bit more polished. I don't think he has the upside or the physical skills that his twin brother Ayo Odiyemi has, but Ayo Odiyemi is going to be the better player as a rookie. So I think the Sonics are going to be a little bit more intrigued by Ayo over Ayo. Ayo Odiyemi is a very talented player in his own right. He's built pretty similarly in build. 6'6", around 280 pounds. He's a better scorer right off the bat, and he's also a better defender. He's a little bit more smarter on that side of the floor. He was a basketball player from a young age, whereas his twin brother, Ayo Odiyemi, his first love was soccer before eventually transitioning into basketball. So that's why Ayo is probably a little bit better as of now. Their older brother, Diemi Odiyemi, currently plays for the Golden State Warriors. He was a top 10 pick 2 years ago and is pretty much baby Draymond Green for them, essentially. So those are pretty much all the guys I think the Sonics could consider at 17. Moving down the board, there are some other guys I like if the Sonics were to move down or move back in the draft, including Johansson. He's originally from Norway, but he actually plays for the Swedish national team. This is somebody who, again, fits the build of what you look for in a role player. He's going to be a very good defender right away. He's a pretty solid shooter. He can drive to the basket as well. I don't think Hansen has elite athletic upside, and he's not the most consistent offensive player yet, but if he can become a little bit more consistent, I have very high confidence in saying he's going to be a good NBA player. Ideally, he's not going to be the pick at 17, but if the board plays out really horribly for us, he's not a bad fallback option. So ideally, he's not the pick at 17, but if we get unlucky, he wouldn't be a horrible choice. Another guy who could be a good fallback option at pick 17 is big man Deshawn Jones out of Kentucky, who really played well down the stretch this year. He was phenomenal in the NCAA tournament, leading Kentucky to the national championship game where he recorded 24 points and 15 rebounds, losing in a very close game to the aforementioned Stanford Cardinal. Even though Deshawn Jones is 7'4", he's a very skilled player. He's a really good three-point shooter, and he's also good from the mid-range and inside. So he can score from all three levels of the floor right away, and his size makes it easier for him to shoot. It's not really like you're contesting him. He doesn't really have great athleticism, but he is a pretty good defender. And again, his athleticism lacks his upside, but he's going to be a good player right away. Some other notable players in here include the Boucher triplets, Mike, Mitch, and a little bit down the board, Max, Hami Johansson, Tien-Chun Lee, Jamal Clayfield, Jacob Judge, all guys I like here down the board. But the name to really watch out for here in the second round is China native power forward Isaac Liang. I don't really know why Liang is projected to go this late, because honestly, I think he's one of the 20 best players in this class. If his stock was a little bit higher, that was an awesome dunk. If his stock was a little bit higher, he could be a guy who we'd consider at 17, and I wouldn't really blink an eye. Liang does not have elite NBA athleticism, although that highlight dunk suggests otherwise. But I think he's a polished player who's going to be a good role player. He's not a great three-point shooter, but he's good from inside the arc. He's a really good mid-range shooter. He's got good touch around the basket. He's got good post moves and control down low. Defensively, he's a machine inside. He's a good rebounder too. He just has to improve on his consistency, and if he could become a little bit more versatile, that'd be nice. But other than that, he has no business going in the late second round. He should absolutely be a first-round pick. Some possible undrafted gems include Vladimir Varenko, Jacob British, Monte Rush, and others. So there's the draft class. Very fun group of players. I do want to go over some of these mock drafts as well because I find this to be quite interesting. Draft Express has Yazid Nkumbra Bekazizwe going #1 of the Sixers. Maybe he can complement with Joel Embiid. The top 10 or so goes as expected. The board plays out pretty well for us here, but they actually have us going with a player who I haven't really talked about, Seok Jun Ho, a point guard from South Korea, over guys like Usher Sage, Tavin Dubois, Makai Moon, Chuma Nadaye, McGlovin Ashe. I think that South Korean point guard is talented, but I don't think I'd pick him over all those guys. 2K is the 76ers going with Silas Edwards, #1 overall. Again, the top 5 players as expected. I think those 5 guys will be the top 5 picks in some order. And then after that, some of the guys we like, such as Khalil Zaire, Tavin Dubois, Hassani Carson, Makai Moon, go right before us. So we end up going with Chuma Nadaye from Stanford, which wouldn't be a bad pick at all. He's a guy I really like with his three-point shooting, his defense, and his athleticism. Interestingly, they had Isaac Liang go at the end of a first round to New Orleans, so maybe he will be a first-round pick. Maybe other scouts see what I see in him. This last mock draft from NBA.com was very interesting. They have Silas Edwards at #1. The top 4 picks make sense, but they have the Capitanes going with Ikenu Chukwumereshi at 5. The player who missed out on the top 5 was Misago Inyago, who isn't the pick at 6, or 7, or 8. They have him falling all the way to 9. Very similar to Kyrie's story dropping a few years ago. If Inyago falls to 9, best believe we're going to make some phone calls. We might try to move up. They have a selecting Wisconsin center, Kirkland St. Juste, who's a very offensively skilled big man. I like him, maybe not at 17, because we have a very similar player who we drafted last year in Octavius Macon. Again, Isaac Liang at the end of the first round, this time to the St. Louis Spirits, which I once again find quite interesting. So let's talk about the NBA Combine and pre-draft workouts before we wrap up today's video. This information is very important to see how all these guys do through the athletic testing. And along with athletic testing, you've got all these shooting drills as well. This will help us figure out who we want to invite into pre-draft workouts, particularly guys who may have not participated in the Combine, because unlike the NFL, not every NBA prospect participates in the Combine. Most of them do, but there's always a decent chunk of first-rounders who choose not to because they feel that it wouldn't really help their stock out that much since it's already pretty high. Some notable performances included Chuma Nadaye, who ran really quick times in the sprint in the lane. He also had a 40-plus inch vertical jump as well. Leo Boratundo had a really high vertical jump, but he couldn't bench a single rep off the bench. Some of the top shooters included Mac Jackson, who actually really struggled from within 15 feet, but he was very good when it came to shooting the three-pointer. Usher Sage was unsurprisingly great when it came to the shooting drills, along with Cairo Nazarenka. He did decide to participate in the Combine, even as a top pick. Kirkland St. Juste, the center out of Wisconsin, shot the ball really well. Maybe we should consider him at 17. So for our 12 pre-draft workout invites, I only focused on guys who I thought had a chance of falling to us, so I didn't really invite these top prospects because I don't think we have any shot of getting them. The players I invited were Makare Jordan, Marquise Ramsey, Sanjay Waweru, Leo Boratundo, Tavin Dubois, McGlovin Ashe, Makai Moon, Chuma Nadaye, Hassani Carson, Usher Sage, Ayo Odiyemi, and then Isaac Liang down the board. He's not going to be the pick at 17, but I do like him. I think the most notable performers here, I would say the biggest one who impressed me was probably Usher Sage. He had a really good athletic testing. Obviously, he shot the ball well from 3. And I think these pre-draft workouts are a little bit more important than the Combine because this shows who does well in our facility, who wants to be a Sonic, I guess, who really focused, who really delivered, and who really wants the opportunity to play here. I think all these guys would love to join an NBA champion, but who really wants it? Tavin Dubois was another guy who did well. Makare Jordan shot the ball surprisingly well from 3. Isaac Liang overall struggled in athletic testing. He was certainly the worst of the group, but he's not as good of a prospect as them, so it kind of makes sense. So that's going to wrap up the episode. Next time we've got the NBA draft. What do we do with our 17th overall pick? Do we keep it? Do we move up? Do we move down? Do we make a blockbuster trade for a star? We've got a lot of options. Hope everybody enjoyed. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out. Go Sonics.